The DataWaves, a real-time poiesis between art and synesthesia. In the age of AI, audiences crave multi-sensory experiences. Audio-reactive art becomes essential as it transforms sound into a living visual dialogue. In contexts where access to digital infrastructures remains uneven, real-time AI practices do not merely follow technological trends, they emerge as necessary strategies that align artistic creation with contemporary modes of perception while reconfiguring local conditions into sites of innovation, transforming poiesis into a situated process. Audio-reactive visual techniques represent the technological actualization of a long history of audiovisual experimentation, from early synthetic devices to computational cinema. What distinguishes contemporary real-time systems is their capacity to generate images instantly from sound data, establishing a continuous feedback loop between perception and action. DataWaves represents a series of experimentation that I have done with AI and creative coding as a research base for text sans image, flesh and flash at the boundaries of the body and machines event. My DataWaves experimentations explore this new poiesis. We presume that creation is not a single act, but a continuous dialogue between data and perception, between machine and human, between artist and audience. The senses are like drugs and music. They are means of invoking an entry. They are means of invoking an entry to the subconscious world, as it is as it is in the book The Soundscape with Murray Schafer. Could the senses be integrated into art? We have the question, so could real-time audio-reactive visuals become a new way of expanding poiesis into a multi-sensory dialogue rather than a single medium through creative coding and AI-driven art? We will begin by the first part of this presentation. We will begin by discussing the real-time audio-reactive visuals as a simulation of synesthesia and poiesis in the context of real-time AI-driven artistic production. Real-time audio-reactive visuals as a simulation of synesthesia. I initially experimented with audio-reactive visuals through creative coding before integrating AI-driven image generation. Therefore, I use systems using models like Stable Diffusion to generate audio-reactive visuals in real time. Real time is used to describe the way in which a computer system receives data and then communicates it or makes it available immediately, according to Cambridge Dictionary. The key characteristics of real-time AI-driven art is it is based on learned patterns, not explicit rules. The output is probabilistic and unpredictable. It can be real-time when connected to inputs like sound and motion, and it introduces latent space navigation. Early experiments with audio-reactive visuals. So the early experiments in the first decades of the 20th century sought to establish direct correspondences between sound and visual phenomena. Devices known as color organs attempted to translate musical structures into chromatic compositions, mapping sound into light and color. Among these pioneering efforts, Mary Helle Greenwald developed the Neurathar between 1919 and 1927, an audiovisual instrument designed to perform light as one would perform music. Through such explorations, artists and inventors aimed to create a unified sensory experience in which sound and image were intrinsically linked. These early dispositives can be understood as the first attempts at a synthetic poiesis, which is a mode of creation in which visual form does not pre-exist but emerges dynamically from the translation of sound into light. Here it's WinMap. It is launched in 1997 as one of the first and most popular full-featured MP3 and audio software players. It provided a unique and influential visual and sonic interface for users adopting new sets of practices and technologies associated with digital music. This is basically a software where it was very famous for doing music visualization or applying visualizations of sound into videos, basically audio reactive visuals in real time. Creative coding and AI-driven art. So what I use in the series DataWave is Touch Designer. Through my experimentations with creative coding, I began with raw sound input, which serves as the foundation of my creative coding process. The audio is analyzed and transformed into data structures that can be manipulated by algorithms. These structures are then mapped into visual forms. This allows sound to become motion. So generative AI models are integrated to interpret and expand the patterns, which adds a layer of unpredictability. This result is a workflow where sound evolves into art, bridging auditory and visual creativity, which is a simulation of the neurological phenomenon synesthesia. Experimental real-time audio reactive visuals is linked to the sensory-motor experience. Such immediacy corresponds to what Edmond Cochot describes as a relation without perceptible latency, where a causal link between action and response is experienced as instantaneous. Touch Designer. I've used a server called Stream Diffusion. This is basically a plugin. So server-side AI encompasses cloud-based AI services. It's like Gemini 1.5 Pro running on the cloud. So these models tend to be much larger and more powerful. This is especially true of large language models. And streaming breaks up a resource you send or receive into smaller chunks, offering results in real time. The output adjusts continuously as input is added and adjusted. This is a common technique for browsers to use in receiving media assets such as video buffering or partial loading of images. AI servers are high-performance computing systems designed to process complex artificial intelligence workloads. This includes large-scale model training and real-time interference. The concept of poïétics. It is developed by Paul Valéry, particularly through his lectures at the Collège de France. It is not concerned with the study of finished works, but rather with the theory of artistic creation. It focuses on the process of making, analyzing the mechanisms of the mind in action during the production of the artwork. In this perspective, Valéry privileges the act of creation itself over the final result, which is understood as provisional crystallization of an ongoing process. Creation unfolds as an unpredictable process, emerging from the dynamic interaction between intention, technical apparatus, and sensory input without predefined structure or final form, where the artwork appears as the momentary resolution of a continuously evolving state. Poiesis is a Greek term meaning bringing forth or creation. Traditionally, it is referred to the act of making. We presume that in the age of interactive real-time art, poiesis shifts from being a static act to a dynamic process. In classical poiesis, the artist was the sole creator. In real-time interactive art, creation is distributed between artist, audience, and even algorithms. This means poiesis is no longer just about making an object, but about orchestrating experiences. My creative process initially developed through painting within installation-based practices before shifting toward audio-reactive visual systems. Within this trajectory, the concept of the fragment has emerged as a central axis, closely linked to machine imagination, mental images, and the ways in which space and perception are constructed and experienced. The exploration of real-time creation and synesthesia constitutes a critical framework from my experience, through which I conceive my work as an interactive process that brings AI systems into dialogue with sonic elements drawn from my regional context in Tunisia. Valerie Poiesis takes on a renewed dimension. Creation is no longer a distant act, but a living process, emerging here and now. The artwork becomes a site of co-presence, where human and machine jointly produce form. Nothing is fixed in advance. Time is experienced in its immediacy. Authorship becomes shared, and the work remains open, constantly shaped by the flow of interaction. We suppose that a tight causal loop exists between action and response. The experiential continuity aligns with Stern's view that cognition is inseparable from sensory-motor engagement within a shared environment. Within this framework, real-time operation, creation unfolds as a series of situated adjustments rather than as the execution of the predetermined form. Thus, interactive art constitutes a distributed poietic field where the work emerges from the relational interplay between human and machine, dissolving fixed authorship. This produced a state where a perception and action are inseparable, what we would call a continuous present. The artwork is not fixed, it emerges through interaction. When the response delay is below the minimal threshold of perception, the user has the impression that the feedback is immediate and experiences a sense of presence, the institution that the machine and the user are interacting, sharing the same space and the same temporality. For them, everything happens as if they were truly present, hic et nunc, and the space and time simulated by the computer. A causal link is immediately established between their actions and the machine responses. Also, the mind is always embodied in the person's sensory motor activity. It intertwines with the immediate physical environment that co-creates it. It is constituted through its interactions with other minds. So this is cited in Edmond Cochot, Intersubjective Relations in Immersive Arts, Presence and Temporalities, and Daniel Stern. So Edmond Cochot evokes ideas from Daniel Stern, his work, The Present Moment in Psychotherapy, A World in a Grain of Sand, where our relationship with the environment, the physical environment, is based on the senses. To conclude, my DataWaves experimentation explore this new poiesis. They are not finished objects, but living processes, streams of information translated into sound, color, vibration, and movement. Here, creation is not a single act, but a continuous dialogue between data and perception, between machine and human, between artists and the audience. When real-time AI is connected to sound, movement, or environmental inputs where sound frequencies modulate image generation, movement alters prompts or parameters, and light or color feeds back into the system, it produces a synthetic form of poiesis in which creation becomes multi-sensory, relational, and embodied. I aim to experiment installations that resonate with local modes of perceptions and gathering.